Hello and welcome back to the Comic Lyric Podcast, the podcast that does deep dives into the best, worst, and middest of comic books, graphic novels, and sometimes mangas. I'm your host, the soon-to-be-known as Comic Stan, and with me, as always, is my human co-host, it's Jamie.
Hello there.
Would you say human is applicable enough for you to be okay with that use?
How do you know?
I mean, I suspected for a long time.
Suspected what?
You of being human.
Have you?
Yeah, I've seen you do human things, like you've misplaced your keys before, or you've...
Right, and that's consistent. I never know where my keys are.
Yeah, exactly, it's how very human of you.
My keys are misplaced at all but the brief moments when I know where they are.
And we're actively driving your car, and even then it's like, are they in the ignition?
Yeah, I've definitely been driving my car and panicked that my keys aren't in my pocket.
Which is another version of the where are my glasses? Oh, they're on my head.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I remember I was sat in my car with the key not in the ignition. And I thought, where do I normally put them when I'm in the car? Because I was like eating lunch in the car or something and I didn't need to put them in the ignition. And I was like, oh, they go in the ignition.
The keys go in the ignition.
That's why I've never had to find a place for them in my car, because they always have their place.
So that's the adult version of that's why we do the training as a baby of like the square shape goes in the square hole. It's like, this is how you know where your keys are when you're older.
My lateral thinking was so good as a child, I realised that everything went in the square hole.
That's a deep cut TikTok reference?
Yeah, I think it is.
It is, yeah. For the older listeners who might not be aware what the square hole joke is.
We don't have any older listeners.
We might. I haven't asked everyone's age, so I don't know.
What, the convention?
Yeah, but if you're older than
which
a certain
you,
age,
listener, weren't invited to, and you're going to have to work out why.
And if you're over a certain age, leave.
Oh, no! You can't do that.
Older than us is old, but but younger than us is too young. So you have to be in that sweet spot for us to think you're okay as a listener.
One of the things that started to happen now, and it's worrying, Ryan, I don't like it, is that Gen Zers are making their way into my life through different channels. So, like, you know, friendship groups that I'm in that aren't just like me and like you, people that I've known for a long time. Some Gen Zers are starting to infiltrate those friendship groups. And now I'm like the old person in some of my friendship groups.
Absolutely disgusting.
It's fucking weird, man.
We should probably build a wall, I reckon.
I was, you know, kind of relatively well dressed for me the other day. And one of my friends looked at me and went, yeah, that's hard. And I was like, pardon? Sorry. And he went, it's hard as fuck, mate. And I was like, geezer, I'm wearing a tweed jacket. I don't look hard at all. And he was like, no, the outfit goes hard. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. I am old.
Thing is, goes hard was an older phrase, but I think it's come back around. Yeah, because like back in like the late 90s, early 90s, like music went hard. Like that was like, but that was a very specific. Yeah, I remember it being used, but I think it's then went away for a bit, and now it's kind of come back. Like someone's picked up an old thing, like, oh, this is cool again. You know, it's not even expressly retro, but I think that is what has happened, whether people realise or not.
I've been trying to make a piece of slang from before we were born come back recently, which is referring to somebody as being natty, not in the modern sense where they just don't take any steroids.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, if anybody asserts to you that they're natty, they're definitely doing gear. But like,
and if they're an actor for an action film and they've suddenly become muscled, it's, you know, yes. Despite their claims,
if Chris Hemsworth listens, because let's face it, this is kind of, we've
done Thor, so he might have heard
he
about
might
it.
have listened.
Yeah,
just let us know what gear you're on, bro.
Private DM, obviously.
Yeah, no. Well, no, fucking tweet it out. Like we're all interested.
How we broke that story is like, come on, Chris. Like, all right, fine.
These two guys in England on this podcast
somehow managed to crack the code that everyone already knew and assumed, but just hadn't been heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how are things, Ryan?
You know, same old.
Yeah.
Been reading comics. I mean, that's why we're all here.
I've not been.
I mean, that is the main point of the podcast, isn't it? Is me telling you about comics.
Well, literally, yeah.
And making you read them.
Like, sometimes I feel as though I can get away without doing the reading. It's similar to when I was at university, whereby you could tell if somebody hadn't done the reading because they'd just be kind of trying to steer the conversation in tutorials to like this kind of very vague general area. And I do that here. I filibuster my own podcast sometimes when I'm like, I've not done enough of the reading. I'm just going to have to talk about COD.
I mean, also, if you ever need to, just let me talk, because, you know, I can just keep going on. Like,
I don't want to do that to the listeners, Ryan.
I mean, I can see your point, but also, you know, they're here now, so they're stuck with us. They've downloaded the episode. It's too late now.
It's on their phone.
Exactly.
How do you even delete something from one of those
house.
things? Oh, that's weird, man.
So
I mean, you are.
yeah, I'm in your house right now. So speaking of comics, Dune, the graphic novel we are here for. Should have mentioned that up top, but we got there in the end eventually.
Yeah, we got there.
But Dune 2 is coming out soon. It will have come out by the time this episode comes out. I'm very excited for it because I saw the first one in cinema and it was great.
Is there some core context that I don't have because I've not watched any Dune film?
So for what we've read, this is a adaptation of the original novel or novels. So
cool.
we are getting a direct adaptation. You don't need to have known anything else. There is a bit of preamble, which I think is very interesting, which I think you'll appreciate. Firstly, as I said, we're doing this for the films. The film's directed by a favorite director of mine, Denis Villeneuve, who
beautiful pronunciation. I noticed that you needed to gesticulate to get that out.
Yeah, with the spicy meatball kind of hand.
That's what it's called.
Well, it's chef's kiss, but you know,
the gesture you're making is what Italians do when they're annoyed.
No, but it's also like good though. Like,
is it?
Or you know, like the two fingers kind of
the okay finger is just a bumhole.
But there is like it's like kind of the thumb to the middle finger and ring finger. That's a bit of like a like this is a spicy meatball. You know that one. Which I will say, if you're born in the 90s. That's a Mask reference that just stuck with a bunch of us for decades afterwards.
To the extent that it features in Scott Pilgrim.
Exactly. It's transcended genres, if anything. But Denis Villeneuve, I pronounce it correctly because it's one of the few foreign names that I can pronounce correctly because I heard it enough times. But also, I like his stuff. He did Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049 and Arrival, which were two critically acclaimed films that did not do well financially.
Is Arrival the Tom Hanks one?
No, it's...
you know
Jeremy
what I mean,
Renner and someone else, but it's about aliens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're thinking of the Arrival's gate of the airport that Tom Hanks is stuck in.
Yeah. That's a great film.
I can see the connection
he's
you
worked out
made.
the quarters and he's just there with all the trolleys.
Yes.
It's really good.
No, I'm talking about at least like he's known for like, was it high sci-fi? Is that the expression? Yeah. So those kind of films didn't do well commercially, but they were loved enough that he was given the Dune franchise and they were like, go with this. And this one's actually the part one that came out a couple of years ago.
The one with Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah, he's the main on both, but it actually did well financially. So everyone's like hyped for the second one, which is
because everyone
great.
wants to look at Timothée Chalamet because he is disgustingly pretty.
And Zendaya is in it as
well. Is Zendaya in it?
Zendaya's in it as well,
that's a fucking...
You would love the Dune film, I think. I think if you like that kind of filmmaking where like it takes time and it's slow burn and it kind of builds up, I think you'll really enjoy them.
I mean, my favourite films are mostly French and old, so...
And Denis Villeneuve is famously French, so...
Famously French and will be old at some point.
Because if he wasn't, he'd just be called Dennis. But... I assume.
That's really tickled me.
That's the British... Oh, what? Dennis? No, it's Denise.
How do French people, like, francise?
Franklicize? I've made that up.
Yeah, I mean...
It sounds cromulent, you know.
It is a perfectly cromulent word.
Yes.
How do French people pronounce your name?
Rian, probably.
Because I'm Jamie.
Jamie.
Hello, Jamie.
Jamie.
That's how Northerners say my name. You're right, Jamie. You're right, love.
It loses a bit.
Do you want a par, Jamie?
It loses a bit of the joie de vivre when you translate it naturally. So yeah, the films are great. Highly recommend them. It kind of influenced my reading of the graphic novel here, but just to get across as well, the original novel, Frank Herbert. Written in the 60s.
Yes.
There was an 80s film by David Lynch, which apparently is not great, but is very interesting watch.
I mean, it's David Lynch.
Yeah, with Kyle MacLachlan in the main.
Oh, shit, really?
Yeah, as the Timothée Chalamet character. So
does Timothée Chalamet play the Duke's son?
Yes, yeah, the main character.
He'd be really
Paul.
good at that.
Yeah.
Paul. They all have these great names, and then Paul.
The thing about the names, I'm getting ahead, but the thing about the names is when you're reading most of the names I can't pronounce, they either their names I can't pronounce or they're like very biblical names like Paul and others like that. And then in the middle of all these, you've got bloody Duncan, Idaho. Like, what are you doing here? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of it that...
Duncan, Idaho sounds like Indiana Jones's cousin. Like...
Yes.
His
cousin.
Yeah, just like a weird, like a similar kind of
Imagine Thanksgiving at that house. Indiana kind of swans in and he like, you know, gets the turkey from the kitchen with his whip and he sits down and then Grandma's like, so what have you been up to, Duncan? It's like Indiana's like, I found the lost ark, and they're like, yeah, I know. So what's Duncan been doing?
He joined the Freeman on the Anarchy. That's a whole nother thing, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I suppose.
So Frank Herbert, as I mentioned, what I thought was interesting, which you would enjoy, is this adaptation, as well as a bunch of books. They've been written or adapted by one. Just looking for the notes in here. Brian Herbert, who is the son of Frank Herbert.
Oh, okay, that's kind of cool.
His son not only adapted this along with Kevin J. Anderson, who just someone he adapts with.
Yeah.
But the main point is they adapted this, the graphic novel, and they've been writing extra Dune books as part of. So he has continued his father's franchise. Don't know what the reception is, but we'll see as we go on. And also they were illustrated by Raúl, Allen, and Patricia Martin. So
who did quite a good job.
I thought a very good job. And and as I said, let's get into, let's starting with the arting, obviously. I was going to try and slip in okay, let's go.
Okay, let's go.
But because we've already got the starting with the arting, I think I should put that before the preamble. So,
yes.
So, okay, let's go. It was written by, drawn by, and then now we're starting with the arting.
Yeah, so starting with the arting.
As is customary.
As is customary.
What were your first impressions of the art?
Very orange.
Yep.
I liked it. So this is going to be one of those where I don't have a lot to say about the art. And so I think I have a similar relationship to the art here that you have with a lot of Marvel stuff, where the art was doing its job largely. For me, there's nothing exciting happening with the art, but also the story didn't initially make a whole lot of sense to me because we're just talking about all these different clans that are like doing this thing and there's like interplanetary stuff happening, I think. And so a lot of the time I was going back over the same speech bubbles going, who are they talking about? What's going on?
Yeah.
And so the artwork, in my reading of it at least, kind of became secondary because I was having to do quite a lot of work just to follow who the fuck everyone was and what the fuck was going on.
Yes.
I noticed no jank.
I actually noticed a little bit of jank.
Where was the jank, Ryan?
So to call it jank might be strong.
I'm so proud of you.
Because it might just be contextually appropriate. But jank. I'll show you what I mean.
Contextually appropriate jank.
You'll see what I mean when I show you. So I noticed this face.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Janky face. But what I say about context is, so there's a face where his lips are kind of pursed with his teeth showing a bit like a horse. Like the main character. It's
similar to Spider-Man in that scene where he's doing all the web goop.
Biting the bottom lip.
Yeah, absolutely.
But contextually what I mean is the context of the scene is it's the bit where he's got his hand in a box and is basically torturing him.
Yes.
So for that, I'm like, can you really, face looks weird. Well, considering what's happening to him, that actually kind of makes sense.
And even though that face kind of looks weird, everything's in the right place there.
Yeah, it's a weird face, but one someone could make in real life.
Yeah, totally. Like the eyes are in the right place, the pupils are going the right way, everything's the right shape and size.
It was just an odd one. It kind of took me out a little bit, just to be like, that's a weird face. But then I was like, well, you can't judge someone. If you took a photo of someone in real life, you could probably catch a face like that. You know when you pause a YouTube video?
Yes.
And then it's on someone's face and you go, that's a weird face.
Or you're watching somebody do a guitar solo.
The biting the bottom lip. Yeah.
Oh man, you know about guitar faces, right?
I've seen some guitar faces.
Yeah, it's like they people pull mad faces when they're playing guitar solos.
Yeah, when they're hitting it just right.
Yeah, totally. Like John Mayer put it best, where he says there's something about scrunching your face up, and he gestures with his arms. It's in his Hot Ones interview,
right?
Where he says that gets the note from here in square parentheses, gestures to his chest to there, open arms pointing towards a fictitious audience.
Yes,
like it, and like. I imagine that face though is one that, because all artists use studies, right? Like if you're like, I need to draw somebody in a contorted grimace, I'm probably going to go on Google and look up some pictures of a contorted grimace, right?
Yeah.
I imagine there's not that many genuine photos of that particular face because it's an odd one to capture, and so that would be a challenging study, I think, for most artists. And it didn't take it out. That probably was my favorite passage of everything I read.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, because that trial scene where they were like testing him to see if a male a male could do the thing that women do in this world.
Yeah, they're part of a group that I've forgotten the name of, but it's kind of like a witch's coven, but like a space version.
And it was very pregnant and poignant, and it was quite like a powerful scene. And, his mum waiting outside, resisting the urge to stop the torture because she knows that the torture is important to his coming of age almost. Like, I thought that was actually a really well-written, quite pivotal scene in what I read of it, It was
all paced very well. Like, at no point did I feel it sped up or slowed down or anything. I think
it was all paced quite slowly.
And I think that's because the book is probably paced that way. And it's literally the son of the author, so someone who's very familiar with the original text. I think they probably did without having read the original book. I would hazard a guess they've probably done a good job of matching the pace of the original novel.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is maybe the second time that we have done a straight adaptation of a novel.
Yep.
And obviously the last time we did it, I was really, really familiar with the novel, and we both really didn't like the comic book. Whereas here, I'm not familiar with Dune at all. I've never read it. I've not seen any of the films. I went into this... I kind of thought that Dune was Mad Max, if I'm being completely honest with you.
I can see why you would think that, yeah. The fourth Mad Max, especially. I can see why you'd think that.
Yeah, so in my head, Dune was like a post-apocalyptic thing.
Yeah.
And then I got to it, and it's like, oh no, this is like the...
Like, it's essentially, it's Star Wars before Star Wars.
It's the Star Wars prequel, specifically.
Yeah, a little bit,
It's lots of people in sci-fi looking rooms having conversations about international diplomacy.
But it's what this is. But it also has some of the chosen one elements of the original trilogy. So you can see, it has a bit of both as well. And one part I was going to get to, jumping ahead a little bit, was I liked how there was this front-facing political thriller, but then the more mystical chosen one stuff was up in front at the beginning, but then took a back seat.
Yeah.
So you had kind of enjoyed both types of this kind of genre, this fiction.
Yeah, and admittedly, like, I don't really know what opinions I've gone on record with on the podcast about the Star Wars prequels.
I think we've had quite a few, I think.
I think we've talked about them a lot. And on revisiting them and thinking about them within the context of the Star Wars universe, the idea of a political drama set to the backdrop of like interstellar
colonization,
is quite interesting, actually. And this does an interesting job. It applies a feudal system, which again was, I think it was an interesting choice for the 60s, right? When particularly this was an American writer, I'm assuming.
I think so. I will double check that. 2 seconds. American author, yes.
American authors like playing with feudal ideas because they're a bit sexy to them, because they're European and it's not part of their history.
Yeah. The idea of, was it not next of kin, but what's the word?
Heirs
and stuff like that. Yeah. Someone who's continuing your legacy is...
heirs and dynasties and the kind of,
bit more exotic to Americans, whereas here it's still happening. Like, it just still exists.
Yeah, I mean, we still have barons and dukes and earls and all that shit floating about. I mean, most of them are absolutely in poverty now and can barely afford to heat their stately homes. But...
and inbred.
That took me a moment. What I imagined was a guy in a flat cap and shooting gear, just like swathed in Hovis.
I mean, you are from Norfolk. You should have a very acute reading of the word inbred.
I mean, I am the acute reading of the word inbred, sunshine.
You're the dictionary definition.
You open the dictionary to Allén and it's just me going, "Hey, right, boy."
Close the book.
Oh no, the gene pool's so shallow it's made the book wet.
It's like a swamp. That's Norfolk for anyone who's interested.
We used to have a joke that there was no lifeguard at the gene pool in Norfolk.
Massive tangent. I'm going to be very quick with this. I'm watching my my pro wrestling, and there's some pro wrestlers who are from Norfolk. Right?
Yes, there's a whole dynasty of them, isn't there?
Yes. Well, only a couple have actually broke through and got famous. One of them has brought their brother, and he's now a part of it. And she literally described him as Norfolk's most eligible bachelor. And all it reminded me of, this might be a deep cut, the Alan Partridge quote where he's like, "I wanted to watch America's Strongest Man," and so I was like, "Oh, I taped over it." So I was like, "Well, now you've got to deal with Norfolk's maddest man."
Oh, Alan Partridge, man.
Beacon of Norwich, even though he's not from here.
Yeah, he's from Steve Coogan's from fucking Manchester.
But we still rolled out the red carpet for him at Anglia Square for his film.
Well, yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know, for our American listeners, essentially.
But anyone outside of Norfolk, I'd say.
Well, no, because basically most of the film premieres happen in a big cinema in Leicester Square in London. And when he announced he was making his film and they talked about the premiere, he said, Anglia Square, not Leicester Square. Anglia Square is this really rundown
shithole.
It's magical. It's a wonderful place that I adore. It's a brutalist structure built in the 60s with like a shopping complex in the middle of it. And atop it is an old disused cinema. But that cinema is where I saw like Lord of the Rings and shit. Like that cinema has a very special place in my heart.
Our generation has memories from it. They had the Darth Vader model figure, life-size figure in there.
You've just unlocked a memory from the 90s that I forgot I had, Ryan. That's wild.
Yeah, that was the only bit of cinema decor that they had in the entire place, other than the actual cinemas.
Yeah. And apparently my dad, just before they closed, went to go and watch a film there. And one of the screens was so small, he was intrigued enough to ask the person how big it was, and it was a 72-inch screen.
Jeez.
Well, bear in mind, when you, at home, you'd have like a 10-inch TV back in the like 90s. But a 72-inch screen, like, I have a cheap TV and it's 40.
Yes. It's not saying much these days.
Like, people have bigger TVs than that in their hoses now.
Probably why they stopped using that one.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolute rip-off. So, back to the comic.
Yes.
With the art, I will say, there's a first page, there's like a landscape of Araki, I think as I'm going to pronounce it.
Well, Araki is where they go.
Yeah. So of that, because it's the Dune planet, essentially, that looked beautiful. And then once you actually get into it, the art does become a bit less contrasted.
A lot of people in rooms.
Yes. But I think what helps with that is that in the early stages, you're on the House Atreides, is their home planet.
Yes.
And it's dark and grim. There's lots of water, which is useful, but it's like there's a lot of cloud and it's dark and they're indoors a lot. And I think that juxtaposes really well to when we end up on Araki, because then it's orange everywhere and it's sand everywhere. And I think that it's a good contrast for like, it feels like you are hitting a milestone in the story.
Yes.
Like everything's changed, we're now where everything's going to happen. So I like the colors, I think, use that really well to indicate like a change in the story. Other than that, like you said, I don't have much to say about the art, but that's because I was quite engrossed in the story. So, and we'll get into that and my whole, having experienced it before and stuff. But what I noticed was I stopped thinking about the art, and I think that is its own compliment.
Yes, I wasn't super conscious of it throughout, if I'm being honest with you.
So I think it did a good job of telling the story. I think panel layout and stuff, I felt easy to read. And
that's the one thing I did notice. It was a lot of horizontal thirds. So you're dividing the page into thirds horizontally, and then you've got these long, thin panels that scan across.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You don't see that very often.
Yeah, I think that was because they had to fit a lot of the thought bubbles alongside like conversation. So I think they need that extra space to like put it up or down, either above or below the conversation.
It's definitely a stylistic choice that was made.
Yeah.
Because it just scanned completely differently. You were reading it across. You were going down and then across, as opposed to going across and then down, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you were scanning down the panel and then going across to the next the next column almost. It was 3 columns, a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. And I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Well, we probably have, but maybe not registered it. When we were reading it.
Potentially, yeah. But again, even if I have seen that before, I've seen it as like a one-off page where they've just needed to do that. Whereas here it seemed to be whomever was laying this comic book out, that was what was appealing to their eyes because they did it a lot.
Yeah. And I think that was for dialogue's sake, or at least it was a choice in a way to lay out the dialogue. Yeah,
potentially. I mean, it made some of the backdrops look interesting because instead of seeing a traditional landscape, you're almost seeing a cross-section up and down, aren't you?
Yeah. I did really appreciate some of the splash pages. There weren't many, but the few there were, I thought were really good.
It wasn't very rich in them, was it?
Yeah, but again, because they were so rare, when they did come up, I thought they were really good. Like there's one in space where they're going from planet to planet, and it's an entire a royal convoy of spaceships, and that looked amazing. And then there's one right at the end, which is not really a spoiler, I don't think. If you know anything about Dune, you know there's sandworms. That's a big part of it. The last one so we've only read half of the first trade paperback, because it is quite dense.
It is very dense,
but I think it's given us a lot to talk about. Like we know what the style is and everything, and how it's laid out. But the last page of the half we got to, when I said to you to get to, was big splash page of the sandworm first bursting out of the ground. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah,
it was like
good.
really intricate and detailed. This massive monster. There's like lightning coming up as well, which I think is like a sand thing in real science. There's like, I don't know, lightning storms or something to do with deserts or something like that. I'm talking out my arse here. I think it's something I've read in passing.
I'm intrigued as to what.
Something to do with like the friction of sand or something like that.
Okay. That makes sense. Does it?
Maybe. But regardless, it was a great splash panel, is what I'm saying. So I think, that is pretty much all we can say about the art. Again, I enjoyed it for the most part.
Yeah, I didn't dislike it at all.
And in terms of the story and the main part, the first thing I want to talk about is the dialogue. Because I thought it was an interesting choice in that it was quite a stilted dialogue, the opposite of naturalistic. But I think this kind of setting really allows for that. It was almost a bit like Shakespearean, like in just how stilted it was.
So for me, and again, this is very much just kind of my gut feeling about it. It reminded me of two things, and it kind of sat in the center of both of them, which is Patrick Stewart era Star Trek.
Yep.
And specifically, like the second or third season of Game of Thrones.
Fair enough.
Where there's a lot of talk of lineage and different houses and who is who and, who's plotting and who's scheming. But it's that quite dry science fiction stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a drier sense because it is a comparably realistic, again, political thriller kind of thing of like almost like Succession-y in a way, but with a bit more like actual murder and like planetary mining of resources and all this. But yeah, I did appreciate it. It was a bit daunting at first, like when they're talking about this coven group and who's lineage of who and all that.
And it really drops you in.
Yes, which I appreciate.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I complain a lot about stuff. Way too much exposition, this, that, and the other.
This was too much the other way?
Well, I don't know that it was too much the other way, but when I was first reading it, that was certainly my feeling. But again, like, I don't necessarily always have the time to devote to these things. I'm not doing the most careful reading in the world of it. But it does drop you in.
Yeah.
There is almost zero exposition here.
Yeah, and I that definitely makes it feel like you're in the story more.
Well, it certainly makes you feel like you're observing it.
Yeah, but it's
in real time.
Yeah,
in media res.
Like it makes it feel like a more real story because there's all this back stuff that you don't know, and the characters aren't going to explain everything in every dialogue. Oh yeah, that coven that's existed for blah 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 and do this and that. Like no one's saying that to each other. I do think with the art, one thing I missed off was the characters were all quite unique and different enough to tell apart. I thought that was quite
totally.
good.
Like they all looked pretty good. I certainly like the character model, and again, I can't remember who he was now, but the big bald bloke, like one of the scheming barons or whatever.
You're talking about Baron Harkonnen, I believe.
I liked Baron Harkonnen's character model a lot.
Yeah, he looked disgusting in a very appropriate kind of way.
And then the guy who was teaching Paul's tutor.
Yes, with the blonde hair. I think he was the only one with blonde hair, so that made him stick out.
The kind of white hair and the little goatee.
Yeah.
Like, he looked pretty good as well.
He had fun dialogue as well, because everyone else was quite very formal, as it was their characters, and then he was the one who was kind of like, boy, maybe instead of practice fighting, we should, I'll sing you a song, if that's more your thing, whatever. And he was like, this guy's he's banter. Like, he's banter in space.
Top bands. And then he gets there, and they're like, oh, we need you to do this thing, but first will you sing a song for everyone? And he's like, yeah, all right.
And at one point, the Duke is like, "Yeah, we need you to convince the locals to do something." And he's like, "What? How? What level of convincing? Am I breaking legs?" And the guy's like, "No. Just like
we need them to be willing." It's the miners, wasn't it?
Yes, we want a good relationship with them.
Yeah,
I thought that whole aspect. Again, it's a weird thing. What we're doing here, we're talking about a basically straight adaptation from a novel. So some of the stuff we're talking about is the novel that had to be adapted over. So some things we're talking about how they adapted it, and other stuff we're essentially just talking about the source material.
Well, I imagine, obviously with neither of us having actually done the prep work to have read the novel, we can't be sure.
I'll say one big difference that I had from the film, which is as close a thing as I can say in this regard. The film does tighten up some of the plot by it does the big stuff, like all the big stuff that happens here happens in the film, but it tightens up by it gets rid of some characters and has other characters do more. So
yeah, I mean that's standard adapting stuff from written word into film.
Yeah, the biggest difference I noticed was the Duncan Idaho character, who's played by guy from Game of Thrones, the Jason Momoa.
Oh shit, Jason Momoa's in Dune.
Duncan Idaho, yeah.
Fuck. That's really... can we just watch Dune instead, man?
I'll watch Dune with you again. That
sounds like a great time.
Yeah. So Dune, in the Dune film, he plays Duncan Idaho, and the Duncan Idaho character is also the mentor character as well. So they give his mentor stuff to that character, and then instead of him coming along with them on the planet, he mentors him on their home planet, and then he goes ahead because he got to infiltrate the Freeman indigenous people.
Cool.
So they combine that stuff. So for me reading, I'm kind of like, oh, that's interesting that this is a new character to me, and they're doing all this stuff, and then Duncan Idaho comes along and he takes over from there.
I mean, you get that a lot when you adapt novels for either TV or film. Like,
yeah.
We've talked a lot about we over a beer the other day we talked a lot about Radagast the Brand, didn't we?
Yes. Well, you told me about him.
But yeah, he was excised from the Lord of the Rings books.
Yeah.
And so that just happens, doesn't it? And to be honest with you, I would be upset if I was watching a film adaptation that was glutted with characters who are all doing these things and you couldn't follow it, because you spend a lot more time with a book than you do a film.
Yes.
Like, it would have taken you probably a week of reading sessions to sit and read the Dune novel, whereas the film dispenses with that story in 2.5 hours, I imagine?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Like, average runtime of a modern film.
Yeah. Interesting, again, bit of a small tangent, but it is relevant. I watched a film recently called The Iron Claw, which is a biopic kind of film about a real pro wrestling family from the 70s, I believe. 70s, early 80s.
I think you told me about this.
Basically, it's a tragedy. And for anyone who was already into wrestling who knew the story, as soon as we heard there was a film coming, we were like, that's going to be fucking sad. But what's interesting is, so spoilers for the Iron...
Is this the guy who died jumping off something?
No, that's a separate tragedy.
Right.
Completely separate. Spoilers for the Iron Claw, if you want to see it, highly recommend it. It's a great film. Basically, in this family, there's a bunch of brothers. There's 4 brothers and 5 brothers originally. One of them dies a kid.
Yeah.
But then you start with these 4 main ones. By the end, 3 of them have died. And yeah. And the ways that they do are quite tragic, which again, even though you know that, it's still worth watching because for the story.
I mean, a death that you see coming is still tragic, right?
The film is good because it plays in a way where it knows a lot of the audience know. So it plays in a way it's like, you know what's coming, but we're going to still show it in a way where the sadness is still felt, which is quite good. What's interesting is, in the real life, there was an extra brother who also died. And the filmmaker literally had said he had to take this brother out of the story because he felt that if he left it in, it would have been too tragic to be believable.
Oh, mate. Yeah, I get it.
And that's... imagine going to the family being like, you have this other brother who died. We're not going to put him in because people won't believe that this much tragedy could happen to one family. Yeah. But so the reason I bring that up is that the idea of adapting and even real life stuff, and you have to condense it and like merge characters into one and things like that to make it more palatable. With regards to the dialogue and the conversations, I think this is the main point I can make about the adaptation, even without having read it. There's a lot of use of every character having thought bubbles, or not thought bubbles, but like thought showing. Color-coded to each character, so that makes it quite good.
Really easy to follow.
Yeah. I think that was a necessary aspect because there's so much internal monologue from each character in the novel.
So was the book omniscient third person?
I don't know, but I assume it must be based on how much of this in a monologue we are getting from each character.
That was popular at the time as well.
Yeah. So I think they really had to find a way to get all these little bits across because they're very important plot points.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm getting into that is one thing I really enjoyed is you see this constant building of the behind the scenes plans, machinations.
Right, yeah.
And I love how it's not just the plot takes place and then at the end it's, haha, this person betrayed you. And it's like a big reveal. This one I thought it was a really good example of, the Hitchcock quote about building suspense, the bomb under the table.
Yes. Yeah.
For listeners who might not know, there's an Alfred Hitchcock thing. He's talking about how to build tension in a film, and the 2 examples he uses to illustrate a point is, imagine you're watching a scene, there's 2 people at a table, they're just talking, having coffee, whatever, and then the room blows up. And you watch that and you go, well, that was just weird. Then the same scene, but instead this time you show the bomb under the table and then the conversation. And that's just showing how easily you can create tension in a scene. I thought this was a great example of that because there's constant building of tension where there's a plot to assassinate someone. That plot is told to the audience, so we know it going forward. We know there's a betrayal going to happen. Then we see the betrayal kind of coming out into the open before it's meant to be revealed. You see the plans to distract characters, like to try and scapegoat someone else, and you see them reacting in real time and not going for the bait like you thought they would. So all this stuff, again, this is more credit to the original novel, and I can see why it was so liked, because I really got into this. Ooh, they know. Oh, no, they know. Yeah. Oh, now they suspect that correctly that this other party are doing this. And I really got into that, and that's when I was like kind of suckered into the page and kind of tunnel visioned on it because I was just so engrossed in the story.
And again, it's a really and it managed that quite well, didn't it?
I think it paced it quite well, where each reveal was like appropriately timed.
Yeah,
like each reveal from one party or one character, you had enough time to kind of sit with it and internalize it, and then it would be addressed and built on like in good time after that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's read quite a lot of fiction, I often have like some novels will give me a sense that this writer was discovery writing, where they're just writing a story and they're coming up with it page by page. And then other times you read a story and go, oh no, this was really meticulously mapped out.
This was the Charlie from Always Sunny board of names.
With the red
Sylvia.
String. Yeah, exactly. And that's what this story feels like, because it is quite well meted out, and there is quite a lot of intricacies, isn't there?
And especially with all this intricacy going on and getting sucked into that, I then would have points where I'd remember, oh yeah, there's a Chosen One subplot, which is actually really the main plot, but it's pushed it back and you know it's going to come back. Like, I thought that was really well done.
I mean, I definitely felt that the Chosen One stuff was a subplot.
But then I think it's intentionally meant to feel that way with all this other stuff going on, and then that's going to feed into stuff later. Like, having seen the film and the other half of this trade paperback, because that was the whole film, I know it becomes more important as it goes on.
Right, okay.
But then beyond that big stuff, I liked a lot of the little details, which again, more of the novel kind of stuff. Little things like they have shields, and again, I like this when I saw the original film. They have shields where if a high impact thing like a bullet or a quick knife stab, it will block it. But to get through that shield, you have to go get right up to it and then slowly press in, or like a, you know how a seatbelt works.
Yeah.
I think it's like seatbelt, jolt it, doesn't go. Slowly it pulls, and I think that's how those shields work. And I thought that's great for the book, the films, and the comic, because it gives this reason of like, this is why they need to like sword fight close quarters, and that's why you can't just shoot a character from like afar and that kind of stuff. So I enjoyed those little details. Also, there's a Catholic Bible in it.
Yeah, I did know, a tiny one.
Yes, tiny orange one specifically.
But he read from it, and it wasn't actually the Catholic Bible he was reading from, right?
So it's what it is.
Certainly not a passage I recognize.
Yes. So what it is, I looked this up because I didn't know this.
Cool.
So it turns out, interestingly enough, and this probably is revealed maybe in the books more or whatever, this is set in our universe, but it's 8,000 years into the future. So Earth no longer exists, but it did exist.
Right, okay.
And this Catholic Bible is actually more of a amalgamation of all religious beliefs from Earth.
Yeah.
But they've just kind of done it under whatever.
Squished it in.
Yeah, and I think like historians looking at Earth just kind of picked like what the most common, I don't know if Catholicism is one, how big it is a religion. I assume Islam is probably the biggest or widest religion.
One of the big six, yeah.
It's one of the big. But I think that word just happened to get discovered by historians, and they've just grouped all religion under the word Catholicism.
Yes.
And they've gone like, oh, here's old Earth's teachings, and we put it in this Catholic Bible or whatever.
That's interesting.
Yeah, fascinating, isn't it?
That would have been an idea which I imagine would really upset some people in America in the 1960s.
Yeah, but I reckon this flew under the radar so hard that like I don't think anyone really gave a shit.
Do you know much about the Dune novel? Because I know nothing about it, right? Well, I'm going into this completely blind.
So the one kind of reference I have, which I think is a good idea of like its popularity, when Star Wars was coming out, you had a section of nerds or literary readers or whatever who were basically like, this is Dune. So do you know what I mean? Like how most people think Star Wars started the space opera genre.
Yeah.
You had a bunch of people saying, they've just ripped off Dune.
Right, okay.
And that's that, but it was a small enough section that no one really cared. You don't hear about that very much, do you? So
it's ironic because George Lucas was ripping something off, but it was an old Japanese film.
But he might have looked at Dune as well and gone, oh, here's how you frame it in space. Like, to make it more palatable or whatever.
Because I know a bit about like early sci-fi, particularly American sci-fi in the mid-20th century. Because I read a bunch of it on an American literature course that I did when I was...
Did you read was it I, Robot by Will Smith?
I did, yes. So I read I, Robot.
What is this, some kind of robot?
Yeah, funnily enough, mate, I did read I, Robot,
right.
yeah. And I read the Structures trilogy, I forget what they're called now. But he had this trilogy, these 3 novels. Foundations, the Foundation series, and I read The Incredible Shrinking Man, and I read a bunch of 20th century sci-fi, and a lot of it was pretty earthbound.
Right.
There wasn't the spacey stuff kind of happened post-60s after Apollo, really. Because I suppose, space wasn't a massive part of the popular consciousness at the time.
I mean, back then, getting to the moon was like the biggest aspiration, wasn't it?
I mean, getting back there would be a pretty big undertaking even now, wouldn't it? And so I feel like this may have even been a bit ahead of its time in terms of sci-fi fiction about space. There wasn't that much of it from what I've read.
Because then also in a similar comparison, Dune being thousands of years in the future, Star Wars always opens with a long time ago in a galaxy far away.
Yeah, in a galaxy
far
away a long time ago.
We're so far removed from where we are that you can't even comprehend how far we are from Earth, but we are still in space, in our space, I guess. Weird to think the Star Wars could have taken place in our history, though we find a lightsaber buried in a garden or something. So like a
in
World War II
all the
bomb.
Roman mosaic.
Yeah. Someone looks in it when they turn on, no.
Dude, what would you do if you had a lightsaber?
I wouldn't touch it. I would not trust Mike. Would you trust yourself with the lightsaber?
Fuck yeah.
Absolutely not. If you had one, I wouldn't be near you at all.
Well, no, because I'd lightsaber you.
Not even on purpose. That's the real
right, look
fear.
at my new. Oh, fuck.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Could not trust a human being these days with a lightsaber. The Jedi themselves require such intricate training from basically birth just to not nick themselves when they're swinging it around.
Yeah, when they're doing the Obi-Wan swing.
I mean, it's a common swing. I don't know if they popularized it themselves.
Oh no, people call it the Obi-Wan because they were the first Jedi
ones on screen
to do it.
Yeah, but all the somersaults and flips they do with it. Imagine
that's Yoda and he's using the Force.
Yeah, but what about with the high ground and all that? That's all flipping and stuff, isn't it? And they're not getting themselves when they're doing it.
Well, Anakin didn't come out great from that one, mate.
But when Obi did it in the Phantom Menace, he was fine.
Yeah, but Obi was pretty good, man.
Anakin was pretty good as well.
Oh no,
he had some flaws. But
old Ben is the best Jedi. Let's be frank.
Yeah, but he barely moved.
Look, old Ben is the best. I will have no argument here.
He didn't get the same retcon like Darth Vader did in Rogue One, where it's that's why he's so formidable, because he can actually fuck people up in a hallway, which was an awesome scene.
I mean, yeah, because Darth Vader had been David Prowse, who was a pretty slow-moving creature.
Yeah,
he was a big dude. He didn't move very fast,
and fair enough.
Yeah, and so I feel like the only way they could make him powerful was not to make him agile, but make him an immovable force.
Yeah,
or unstoppable force.
They built on that in Rogue One, the hallway scene.
Totally.
Yeah. So back to the comic or graphic novel.
I want to talk about Star Wars.
We're talking about high Star Wars. This is the thinking man Star Wars.
I thought that was Star Trek.
Yeah, I suppose in a way, yeah. But this is their similar thing, that colonization of planets and all that kind of stuff. I really liked the Duke's view of the indigenous people. I thought that was interesting. I think they balanced him well where he's obviously a wealthy person in a position of power, probably from birthright. But I like that they kind of made him firm but fair. He wasn't so nice that it was unbelievable, because we all know people who are rich and powerful are normally arseholes.
Particularly colonizers.
Exactly.
I've never met a colonizer that I've liked.
Yeah. So rather than making him so nice and generous that it was unbelievable, I like that they made him a very pragmatic way of we have to get the indigenous people on our side because it's beneficial to us while we're here on this planet. So he's observing their customs, and he's when someone like addresses him wrong, he's like, all right, come on now, there's a teething period. Like let's allow some, this rough grace period.
He wasn't benevolent, but he also wasn't an awful oligarch.
Yeah, but you don't get the sense that he's just like, we need to be kind to everyone. He's like, we are here to do a job. This will make the job much easier if we're just nice to everyone. If we're just like you, and he doesn't whitewash it. He's not there like, I love you, indigenous people. He's like, look, we're here now. Let's make the best of it. Like I'll do my part, and if you do yours, we can meet in the middle kind of way. Yeah. So I like that.
What a reasonable colonizer he is.
And that's what I mean. That's the most believable level I think you can portray. And that's,
any nicer and it'd be unbelievable. I see where you're coming from.
Paul is an interesting one for I think, again, they're kind of meeting this nice compromise where he's obviously a pampered heir to a throne in a sense, but he's also that level where he's also been hard trained to be very capable. So he has a bit of, he's not quite a spoiled brat, but he is still a bit like, I'm a Atreus heir, and we
see that when that drone thing comes into his room. Yes. And he handles it ably.
And he knows what it is, and he knows to stay still. He manages to catch it before it kills an innocent civilian, essentially.
And I suppose what's interesting is that we know, and this is going back to what you were saying earlier, we know that actually he was meant to find that one.
Yeah, a false plot.
Yeah, he was meant to find it, but also how ably he dealt with it is also kind of really sets his character up. Because in some of those initial training scenes, I kind of go, oh, is he a bit useless? When he's sword fighting with his master, And then you see him do that, and you're like, oh no, he is very competent. Despite being quite young, he's very competent.
Yeah. So he feels like he's been born into rich and fortune and silver spoon, but they've been like, we're not just going to let you sit around the house and not do anything. You got to learn how to fight and culture and customs. And
he needs to be a good duke.
Yeah, exactly. So I appreciated that. I liked, again, another little detail, which I love these kind of details in stuff like this. The fact that the mum has this, not quite clairvoyance, but she's like a kind of body reader, body language. She's very
She can tell, from what I can tell, she can tell where she can see everything that everywhere that somebody's been through their body.
She's a bit of a Sherlock Holmes, but that seems to be a part of this coven.
A bit of a Sherlock Holmes.
She's not too much, but a little bit of a...
She's not a clumsy metaphor for autism, mate. Come on.
She's a bit of a... Did you ever watch The Mentalist?
No.
All right, that's a TV show with a guy who was a fake psychic, but it's because of cold reading people, and then he solves crimes. But it's
Darren Brand.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. You didn't need to cough for that. That's actually very accurate.
Very accurate, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I liked that there's a scene where she's talking to someone who we know is the traitor. So again, bomb under the table thing. And what I liked cutting into his thoughts is he knows she's going to pick something up.
Yes.
That he knows, she knows that he's nervous.
Yeah.
So he has to give some truth to explain the nervousness away.
Yes.
But then also he accidentally uses her informal name. So then he knows oh shit, I've given myself away a little bit. And even after all that and all that he's done to kind of cover his ass, even after all that, she goes, he's hiding something. So I like this, it's like a mental chess game of just how they are being around each other.
That all of those conversations reminded me in their execution of the scene in the house in the dairy farm in Inglourious Bastards.
One of my favorite scenes of all time.
Well, yeah, I mean, fantastic scene by Tarantino. But you know what I mean? Is that kind of conversation where, and this is sometimes played out really well, where you feel that two people are playing a game of conversational chess.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I love that realism, and it benefits a lot from every character having their internal monologue as well.
Yes.
So you see their front-facing, their actions, but their spoken word, and then they're hidden behind the scenes one as well.
This wouldn't work from a single viewpoint.
No, exactly. And I think that's when you pointed out earlier, it's the novel must have been this way. Even though it has a very clear main character, this is you don't see that very often.
Well, I couldn't tell if Paul was the protagonist or if his mum was the protagonist. I kind of felt that they were both protagonists.
Knowing what I know of how it goes, I think Paul is meant to be, but I think the mum is so close to sharing screen time and conversation. I think she's up there. Yeah,
she was my favorite character.
I really liked her. Yeah, you kind of have a little disdain when she allows her son to be tortured, but it does still play it in a way where she gets across how important this is.
It's how important it is, and also it felt less egregious because that everyone involved knew that there would be no long-lasting harm.
Yeah, except for Paul. But she knows her son doesn't know that.
Yes, and that's and I suppose that's some element of psychological torture, but also she knew she wasn't putting him in any real danger.
Yeah.
She knew that whatever the outcome of that, he would come out of it unscathed. Although if he wasn't human, would he have come out of it unscathed?
Apparently, he might have died.
Because this is the thing. So, and this is the thing that I don't understand, that maybe if I'd read more of it, I would understand, or if I'd seen the film. Why was there any question that he was human?
So this is why I addressed you as human at the start, because
Yes.
I think human must have a different connotation, which
Right,
again,
okay.
we and I'm just assuming that based on what we've both read.
But you've seen the film.
Yeah, it's not. They don't use the word human in the film. I don't think. I
Right.
don't remember them using the word.
But is
human.
that scene present in the film?
Yeah, the scene is.
So how
it was
does
in
it
the
play
trailer.
out? What are they testing for there? Are they just testing to see if he is the thing, the chosen one?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think they took out the human thing probably because it's confusing for exactly that reason, as you said, because everyone appears human.
I when I finished reading what we'd read, I scanned back through the rest of what I'd already read, looking for other references to people being human, and I found a couple, but none of them really elucidated that situation for me.
Yeah.
Again, this might be one of those things where there is just some exposition in the novel.
I mean,
like there is it would have taken a paragraph.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it?
It also might be explained because we read a quarter of the novel essentially. So it might be just explained further on down the line. But I can see why in the film adaptation they were like, let's take out this human stuff because it's just confusing, and you can just use the chosen person stuff. And it's the test. I don't think it's not even for being chosen one. It's to see if he's like them, the coven. But the problem is the coven apparently does seem to be mostly female.
Yes.
So
well,
they're
it's a coven.
Exactly. But even in this specific one, they talk about how they're annoyed. The coven is annoyed that she chose to have a son. And it sounds like that old-timey medieval, like, why, woman, haven't you birthed me a male heir? Like, as if they could do anything about it. But in here, she's like, yeah, I was going to have a daughter, but then I chose to have a son instead. Like, the Duke wanted it, you know?
Yeah, and it makes sense that the Duke would want a male heir, because it seems that there's some pretty standard primogeniture happening here.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff about him not marrying the mother of Paul. She's literally a concubine. Like,
well,
that's
no, she's his most treasured concubine.
Exactly. But then I like the attention to detail again, where later the Duke goes, I love your mother and I would have made her my wife, but I had to keep myself available in case of like political marriage and that. And then there's a scene later where the mum has to be betrayed by the Duke and everyone else. And he's telling Paul, this is for show for the other people. You need to tell her that I never suspected her. This is so we can weed out the traitor and make them think that they're being successful when they're not. So I like that additional details as well. Again, it's probably a very well written novel judging by the adaptation.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is it, isn't it? Like, based on what I'm seeing here, because adapting fiction, like a novel, into any other medium, you're always going to have to leave stuff out. Like, written fiction is the most dense.
Yes.
It just by its very nature is the most dense. You can fit more in. There can be wider gaps between the moments of action. It's always going to be more dense than a graphic novel or a film. Based on what's here, the novel, I would agree with you that I imagine the novel's pretty good.
Yeah. And quite dense as well. And it's making me think that this is probably a pretty good adaptation.
I ordered a copy.
Really? Based on reading the graphic novel?
No, I ordered a copy on Amazon this evening.
Nice. There you go.
Not a very nice copy, I'll note, because I collect first editions. Couldn't afford a first
Probably
edition.
one that's been spitting or something, which would be appropriate for the story. Because another bit I made note of, I liked the spitting scene with the freeman.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was really well done, like taking a well-known, obvious slight, spitting at someone, spitting at their feet, and then immediately you go, have they just disrespected the Duke? And immediately Duncan Idaho goes, oh no, water is so sparse, spitting is a sign of respect.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're giving your bodily fluid, you're willingly like giving some bodily fluid to pay respect to someone.
Yeah.
And I love that juxtaposition of like real world, bad thing, but very appropriate for the fictional setting.
Contextually, it makes a lot of sense. Although
Exactly.
I never quite understood the water thing. The
How
thing,
so?
well, the thing I got is, and again, this is nitpicky, and this is world building stuff, and this is probably stuff that in the film would have been explained away really quickly, or in a novel there would have just been a paragraph dedicated to it.
Yep.
Where are they getting their water from?
I think there's, in the same way that there's some water in a desert, like is just very. I just assumed it was as sparse as a desert, like an Earth desert. Because even in an Earth desert, you still have like cactuses and cacti and plants and things like and animals like reptiles and stuff. So they are getting like they're built to survive on tiny amounts of water, probably from like cacti and plants or killing animals that are somehow getting it from the ground. And so I assume it's just that sparse. And there's probably like very rare springs of water and stuff as well.
Well, there's a whole room dedicated to it in that house, isn't there?
Yeah, that I think was not in the film, so that was a nice surprise for me. Like I enjoyed that.
That was a fun moment as well.
Yeah, especially the hidden messages from the previous owners of the property being like a hidden message was pretty cool as well. It was like Morse code indented on the leaf of a plant, which was cool.
Initially, I just thought it was a bit of a metaphor for opulence and waste.
Yeah.
Because we know that we're on a desert planet. She walks in and there is this subtropical terrarium, essentially, behind a locked door. And then it all happens. And that's where she has the revelation about the danger and the murder plots and all this stuff. It becomes quite a pivotal plot point, doesn't it? And I was like, oh, that's quite cool that they've woven these two things together.
I think what's interesting is it does reference, although slightly, it does reference that there are villages of just for lack of a better term, normal people, and then there's the indigenous freeman people.
Yeah.
So there must be some people at these isolated springs of water. There's one spring and a village is just built around it. And then you've got the freemen who are like, we'll just actually hang out in the middle of the desert. We've built these suits. We'll be fine. So
the suits, the suits kind of, you don't really see much of them, do you?
No, I think that you see a lot more of them later.
Right,
I know generally where it goes after the halfway point that I've seen up to in the film. But that becomes a big plot point later. But I think it does make for a cool get-up. Like people in the desert, they've got these suits on them and they've got these robes and stuff just on top to kind of like, I assume, reflect the heat like people do in high heat areas on Earth. Probably said that really meteorologically correct. But probably
in the Middle East,
yes,
Arabs wear robes.
Yes,
like,
white robes specifically.
Yeah, long white robes, loose fitting, not cinched anywhere.
Yeah, again, credit to the novel. I like the little detail of Paul putting his on in a way that only indigenous people do. And it's that, and it's a very prophecy chosen one, kind of like, and he will know your ways as if they were his own, like that. Kind of, and again, it's a little.
That was really good.
Hey, voice actor,
It's the way you kind of like jimmied up to it and looked at me as you did it. Like,
you got to get into the physical.
Yeah, well, no, and that's how acting works. Like, I totally understand what you were doing. It just amused me.
I hunched over like an old crone telling a prophecy.
Yeah.
But he did the little thing, and I thought that was a nice little reminder of, in all this political thriller stuff, it's like, here's that little prophecy subplot, which is actually the main plot, but we've taken a back seat just for the meantime, but here's a little reminder. So I liked all that stuff.
Timothy Chalamet fucking loves a Chosen One story, doesn't he?
Well, he looks the part, doesn't he? He is literally, again, another wrestling term, he's the babyface character who you can't help but root for.
Yeah.
He's young, idealistic, like, I hope he makes it, and he's not so big and muscular that you go, well, obviously he'll be fine. Like,
have you seen him as Henry V yet?
No, I've seen bits. I think I've seen clips, but I haven't seen the whole
Need
film.
to watch the. King.
I've heard it's very good.
It's Henry V. It's a Shakespeare play. It's a pretty faithful adaptation of a Shakespeare play.
Yeah,
it's fucking good.
I mean, this is a pretty faithful adaptation of Dune, so I feel like we're getting our fill of high quality writing.
Yeah, I see. I mean, to talk about Timothée Chalamet for a minute, he's having an interesting run of it. Like, he's taking really diverse roles at the moment.
We're in a Chalamet renaissance.
Well, we are. He's just because I saw him.
It's kind of his start. Like, he's not come back to it.
So the first thing I saw him in was The King, which I loved. I thought he was amazing in it. And then I saw him in The French Dispatch.
Yeah, I thought that was all right.
It was pretty good.
I think I'm comparing it to The Grand Budapest Hotel, which is one of my favorite films of all time.
And this is the thing, right? When I saw it, I was talking to people about it, and they kept going, "Oh, well, it's not that good."
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's only because you're contextualizing it within the context of The Grand Budapest Hotel. Watch it just as a film. It's fantastic.
It's still really well made and entertaining.
Really well made, really well scripted. Timothée Chalamet's performance in it is fucking flawless.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, people are speaking about him really highly for this.
Yep.
I hear rumblings that his Wonka performance was all right.
Yeah, I've heard that was pretty good.
Like, I mean, I've not heard positive things about the film itself, from what I can tell. I don't even know. I'm not even sure if it's out yet.
Yeah, it came out a while ago, and I think it was most people just it's fine, like it's fun enough.
But apparently he was good in it.
Yes. To be fair, the bar there, it's a weird bar with Wonka because you've got who was the original one? Gene Wilder, one of the best film performances of all time, and then you've got Johnny Depp, who just absolutely butchered the role in a very Tim Burton kind of way, which just made him look creepy. I felt like.
Well, and this is the thing: Gene Wilder's performance was accidentally creepy.
Yeah, but in a good way.
You don't know where it's going. Like, that's creepy as fuck, man.
But his was like a hidden under the surface kind of thing, whereas Johnny Depp just looked wacky, weird, like the entire time.
I want to say there is an actor floating about who is related to Gene Wilder. Also, we've been mispronouncing Timothée Chalamet's name.
How is it meant to be pronounced?
Timothée.
Oh, really? I've heard Timothy for most people.
Yeah, most people anglicize his name. Fuck, my phone's just died. He's got your phone.
Who are you trying to look up?
Is Timothée Chalamet related to Gene Wilder? There is an actor working at the moment who's like Gene Wilder's like grandson or something. I
don't think it's Timothée Chalamet.
Well, just because Gene Wilder was American doesn't mean he didn't fuck a French woman, does it?
Yeah, no. He might have. I'm just more saying he just didn't look like someone. Hang on, Gene Wilder grandson's. Like
no. It's I tell you who it is. It's the guy from The Bear.
Yeah, it's not. But that's the first result that's come up is people are asking if he is, but he's not apparently.
No, it's the guy from The Bear who's related to Gene Wilder.
No, that's the first result that's come up.
Oh, is it?
People ask, are Jeremy Allen White and Gene Wilder related? The uncanny resemblance explained. And then it just goes, no.
Oh, okay.
No, they're not. As a clickbaity title would.
So that might be the thread that I'm picking up on in my brain. We can just cut all this whole bit out, mate.
Nah, we'll leave it as a tangent.
Not a very fun tangent, though. It's not as good as the Codcast, Ryan.
Who might be related to who? I mean, that is a very Norfolk tangent.
Do you know about the app in Iceland?
Is it like check if you're related app?
Yeah, because the gene pool there is so shallow.
It's like a swamp.
Yeah. Well, no, you don't get swamps in Iceland. It's more like a frozen puddle.
Yes.
And that's the problem. It's not moved very far because the puddle is frozen. And so there is an app, apparently there is an app you can use in Iceland when you start dating somebody, and it's highly recommended just to make sure you're not cousins.
Well, ending on the topic of incest is probably appropriate for... They probably had incest in the Dune universe, probably keeping the bloodlines pure and all that.
Well, I was going to say, we're seeing a royal thing going on here. Where there are royals, there is incest. That's just the fact of life.
And we know, being British, we know that far too well.
We know all about royals here, sunshine.
If you look to the royal family, the best looking ones, there's a dispute on who their actual parents are. That's the bar. The best looking ones are probably illegitimate. That's how you know.
It was like, Charles II.
I'm aware of his work.
Charles II of Spain with his fucking chin.
Sure.
You don't. That's fine. He was very
I do,
inbred.
but for the listeners, you explain.
He was from the Habsburg Empire. He was very, very inbred. He was very funny looking.
Right. That's the end of the story.
Yeah, just Google it. Just Google fucking inbred Habsburgs and you will see some fantastic portraits of these hideously ugly inbred kings and queens.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. If you're looking for inbred, you don't have to travel all the way to Norfolk. I feel like inbred is one of those things that very rural areas in any Western society just adopts. Like, there's parts of America where, they're all inbred down there.
Do you know that? You know the family who inbred so much that they went purple?
Yeah, I saw that in a weird clickbait story. But yeah, I saw the thing.
And then there's that At Home with the Whitakers, I think they're called. And this bloke has been going to visit them every few years, and they're just horrifically inbred.
Yeah, a cautionary tale for why you shouldn't do that. Essentially,
I mean, I think we all know it's wrong. You know what I mean?
Where are you going with this?
None of us are looking at our siblings going, if only there weren't those damn rules against it.
There's a comedian, Steve Hughes, Australian comedian, saw years and years ago, but he made a great point about it. He was in Norwich, and I think he had this he had this bit for probably all parts of the UK where they claim this, but he was like, You people here claim that you're all inbred in these rural areas, but the next town is like an hour away. It's like, I'm from Australia. It's like, where's the nearest town? It's about 200 miles that way. It's like, all right, fuck your cousin then. Which is a good point.
The general rule of thumb is that cousins are okay.
I'm not quite on board with the fully on that.
Genetically, second cousins are sound.
Fine, I'll take your word for it.
No, genuinely, genetically speaking, second cousins are fine.
Yeah, I think we've concluded both the comic and the incest talk as much as we can.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to keep chatting. How long have we been going for?
We're now hitting an hour. We're coming up to hour 10.
Okay.
Probably a little less cut out.
So, yeah, because there's been a lot of inbreeding talk for some reason.
Are there any other topics you'd like to broach?
No. I mean, I think the comic was interesting. As I've said, I've bought a copy of the book. So I'm not necessarily going to finish the comic, but I am interested to have a copy of the book on my shelves.
I mean, to be fair, the mark of a good adaptation is getting you interested in the source material.
Yeah, totally. And I'm hoping that you're going to come around for a beer and watch the film with me at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I need to see it again before the second part comes out, whenever that is.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose it's hard because I found it a bit impenetrable because I didn't have a fucking clue what was going on for the first 20 minutes to half an hour that I was reading it.
Film does a lot better job of making it a bit more palatable while still making you feel like you're dropping into the middle of the story.
But I don't know that I necessarily want my stories to be made palatable. Like, the fact that I found it impenetrable, I don't know that that's necessarily a mark against it.
Well, again, the biggest example is removing the use of the word human. So like little bits like that, I think, just make it a bit better while still retaining most of what makes it good.
Yeah.
They've not marveled it. MCU'd it. Which I can say, being a fan, like that is a fair enough criticism.
Would you even call yourself a fan of the MCU anymore?
Yeah, I still love the films. I mean, the good ones.
Are they still making them?
Yeah, of course they are. Deadpool 3 is gonna save the MCU, as everyone's saying.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of don't think of Deadpool as being MCU.
Yeah, a lot of people don't, and that's the point of this film.
And I think that was part of its charm, was that it did stand on its own, and it stood on its own so well.
But now the intrigue is you've got this chaotic character who's doesn't feel as rooted down in all the MCU bollocks.
Yeah,
that the MCU shenanigans specifically. But now he's coming into it, not only having not been a part of it before, but also with his fourth wall breaking self-awareness.
Yes.
So he's coming into all this. And it's interesting. I think a lot of people are excited to see what his interactions are going to be like with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man and, those kind of ones.
Yeah, because I think what would be really interesting, and I don't think we're going to get it, is to see Deadpool just kind of... Because where is Deadpool set?
He's not anywhere particular. Like, he's just everywhere.
But yeah, he must be from a place.
I mean, he's Canadian originally, but he doesn't operate in Canada.
I love that he's just casually Canadian.
As is Ryan Reynolds.
Well, yeah, no, I know. But Ryan Reynolds isn't casual about being Canadian. Yeah. He's quite full on in every way.
I did see a video. He was receiving an award for like American. It was achievements in American filmmaking was like an award he was given, and Will Ferrell was speaking at the award, and he was like, "I need this award." Like, he's not even American. He's Canadian. Give him the Canada award. Good video if you can find it.
I would be excited to see him the Avengers deal with Wade Wilson.
Well, that's again what most people I think are looking forward to.
Do you think it's going to rejuvenate it then? Because for me, the MCU's been very stilted for a long time.
Yeah.
Now.
The problem is in all this rhetoric about MCU, it's great again. Oh no, it's bad again. Oh no, it's great again. The only thing that's going to rejuvenate it is consistent quality writing, and quality by the level of MCU quality. So like you think of it's not going to suddenly become Citizen Kane or 12 Angry Men or anything, but just getting it back to the level of not even Endgame or Infinity War, because those were the culmination of 10 years of films and a shared universe, but like your great ones like Thor Ragnarok and Captain America films. Original Iron Man is even better than Iron Man 2, I would say. Iron Man 2 is still decent, but get back to, and Guardians of the Galaxy, and get back to that quality and then go from there. Yeah. So the problem is every time a film comes out, if it's good, it's saved the MCU. If it's bad, the MCU's dead. So it's that extreme every time something comes out.
I think people are falling into the trap of looking at it as a whole.
Yes.
Whereas actually the kind of journey getting between these films is what's fun about it. It's like looking at Bob Dylan's career. And so Bob Dylan's career went up and down a lot.
Yeah.
He was super popular in the 60s, but he was still making stuff in the 70s and 80s, but it wasn't great. And every once in a while he'd come out with a hit, right? And zoomed out and looked at from a whole, you're like, oh, he's had this really hit or miss career. But then if you actually dig into it, you're like, oh no, there's these gems, and it's really amazing that he's kind of had this journey, and that's what the MCU's doing at the moment.
I think the problem is the level of consistency for the first 10 years was a lot closer. So back then, the worst MCU film back then considered was Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah.
Now, by the recent bombs that we've had, commercially and critically, Thor: Dark World is just like an okay film. But so by comparison back then, it's like, don't talk about Thor: The Dark World. And then when we had the Marvels and trying to think of ones that like Secret Invasion was horrifically bad.
See, I've not seen a lot of them, right?
And good to you, because now you have you still hold a better view of the MCU overall because you haven't seen the bombs.
Yeah, I remember there was a point during the pandemic where I was alone in a library, running a library.
Alone?
Yeah, because it was the pandemic and, people still needed books delivered, like people still had to fucking read and stuff. And so I was in this library that I managed alone a lot. Just doing stuff, doing busy work, basically. And so I spent a lot of it. I discovered that my computer and all my shit was really locked down there. Like I couldn't have a phone there for reasons and stuff like that. All I had was the DVD collection in the library and the disk drive on my computer to keep me company while I was alone in this library 8 hours a day during the apocalypse. So I watched a lot of the MCU up to that point then.
Yep.
But we mostly had like the OGs, the big hitters. So I watched the first few Iron Man films.
They're great.
I watched the early Thor stuff.
Sure.
I watched the early Cap stuff.
Yep. Captain America.
Yeah. And it was all like okay. It was all pretty good.
One of my favorite Captain America films is The Winter Soldier.
Yeah, The Winter Soldier was the standout.
Yes.
I think for me, the standouts were the first two Iron Man films and The Winter Soldier.
Yeah, they were the gems. And the first Guardians film was around that time as well.
Yeah, which I liked. I think the thing that interested me most about it was the music is what got talked about a lot in that film. Like the music was kind of a character in the film, and I was listening to it and I was like, these are some great, rock tunes from the 70s, and there's some gems in here, but I think they could have made the music tell the story a bit more. And I think for a film that had the music so closely woven into it, it wasn't strong enough.
I think it was just meant to represent the time at which Star-Lord left Earth.
Yeah, and it totally did that, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like I got, the feeling of the 70s.
Yeah. And then in the later Guardians, he gets a gift, I think for Christmas.
It's a second tape, isn't it?
No, so yeah, in the second film he gets a second. So he, at the end of the first one, he opens a gift from his mum that he'd never touched because he was too painful to open, and he finally opens it and it's a second tape. So he's got this extra tape of music. But before the third one, I think there was a Christmas special before the third one, or it was in Infinity War Endgame around that time. One of the other Guardians gives him a gift, and it's apparently it's the most popular music player on Earth, and he opens it and it's a Zoom. But it's a Zoom loaded with a bunch of more music. So he has a even bigger library of music now to listen to. So, but yeah, fun little quirk. But one of the interesting takes I heard about the MCU was the idea that, people go on about superhero fatigue. And a lot of people are comparing the superhero genre to the Western genre, which was
We've
big for a while.
We've talked about this before, haven't we?
Yeah, and then dropped. But the take I heard, which really contextualizes it well, is there isn't superhero fatigue, there's bad superhero film fatigue. And the way you know that is because when Guardians 3 came out, that superhero fatigue talk had been going on for a while, and then Guardians 3 did really well. Like, it was a great film, everyone loved it, and it did really well commercially. So that proved it's not fatigue with the genre, it's fatigue with bad films in the genre.
And the two Spider-Verse films were fantastic.
Yes, and they're kind of considered like a bit outside because, being animated and not live action.
Yeah.
But it just reinforces they are superhero films, and if any film is just good, people will go see it. So I think now superhero is a genre that is kind of here to stay. Like they're gonna keep remaking them, they're gonna keep revisiting these characters. But the difference maker is gonna be if they're good, great, and if they're not, then you panic. Like that's just gonna be the thing going on from now on.
Miss Marvel's out now, isn't it?
The Marvels is the film with Miss Marvel in it.
Was it any good?
No. And
did you see it?
Yeah, I saw it, and it's my problem with it was it had. I'm probably going to make a video about this soon once I'm kind of set up. But it has odd priorities as a film, and that sounds like a weird thing to say because I've not heard anyone else talk about this issue.
It may. I think I know what you're about to say though.
So when I saw it, there's some prime examples of what the issue is. So there's one scene where the three main characters who are having some issues in between them, as is the arc of the story of their relationship. They crash after failing, essentially, in a part. So it's that kind of darkest night part of the story. And then they talk out, and then they get on the same page, and they go on, right? Standard part of this kind of story.
Yeah.
This conversation takes about a minute, 2 minutes.
Right,
where you go, I'm upset about this. It's like, well, I'm sorry then. Like, all right, fine, we're friends again. So that is an issue. But compared to sections where they devote a lot more time to, at one point, they go to a planet where everyone sings, and that's
Yeah.
the joke. And Captain Marvel didn't want to go, and then when they get there, they realize why, because you have to sing while you're there and stuff.
Right.
They spend a lot of time to this singing dance number, essentially. There's a scene where they're trying to catch a bunch of alien cats to evacuate people off a space station. And again,
Sounds awful.
but the thing is, with that scene, funny scene, I enjoyed it when it was happening, but then at the end, you should have used that time to the character arc and development part, which you just breeze through really quickly. There's one scene where Ms. Marvel's family are in an escape pod, and they're crashing to Earth, and that's a bit of like, this normal humdrum human family are like, oh my god, we're crashing from space and this is crazy, and that kind of thing again. And Nick Fury's with them, and he's trying to like calm them down and that kind of stuff. That gets way more time than it needed to devote to it. You could have cut that out entirely and just went, they got on an escape pod, they got to Earth. It's great if the rest of the film was great, put it in, little bit of extra, fine. But because they cut out these other parts, that's why I'm saying.
And did
the
it feel like
priorities
they'd shot those parts and then cut them?
Yeah,
did it feel that way?
Well, the conversation happened so quickly, so I don't know, maybe they cut it, like we'll never know, that's the problem. But yeah, that's what I mean. They devoted way too much time to like the fun, casual, joking parts, but they didn't do enough to the actual like story, which would have actually invigorated. Another thing as well is there's a weird order of reveal of some parts. So in the film, Captain Marvel destroys the supreme intelligence of the Kree, which is a whole space thing. But they show that later on. After this villain, it turns out that's their motivation.
Right.
But because they reveal it so late on, it doesn't strike as well. Whereas if they showed that at the beginning, they could have shown Captain Marvel doing this thing, thinking, I've done this good thing. And then later in the film, the reveal is, that thing you did at the beginning you thought was good? Well, you've just created the enemy. That's how you've created the antagonist. Like, it's your fault that all the bad stuff is happening. That order of events would have made it a lot more interesting. But then instead, we got the antagonist. Why are you so evil? It's like, well, you did this thing that we're now showing for the first time. It's like, like that.
They didn't show the bomb under the table.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they just exploded later on, and everyone went, "Oh,
Chekhov's
great."
gun turned up in the third act and instantly got let off
without being shown beforehand. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the best way I can describe it. So
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I would quite like for the MCU to just go away for a bit.
Oh yeah, it won't, but I can see your point.
Well, no, because they've made so much money.
To be fair, the only Marvel film that's coming out this year is Deadpool. That's the only MCU film coming out, because they are now slowing down because of the negative reactions, and they were churning them out too quickly. And
I mean, even Disney doesn't have an infinite well of money.
Yeah, they were doing quantity over quality, essentially, and now they're pulling back. So maybe it'll be better from now on. They have to really pick things up, because, as I've mentioned before, James Gunn is helming the DC rebirth of films.
I'm interested because DC films have never really landed. Like, I know that there's been some great Batman films, but in terms of like a cinematic universe, they've been trying for a decade to get one off the ground, and it's just never really happened for them.
Yeah, and you know exactly why. The phrase I heard, which encompasses it well, is everyone wants an MCU universe, but no one wants to make Iron Man. And that was the DC. They just wanted it way too quickly, and it just fell apart because they didn't build it. Yeah,
and I suppose Iron Man was a little loved superhero when they did that. Like, he was the bottom of the barrel for Marvel.
The Avengers were literally just, who have we got which we're not doing anything with?
Yeah,
right,
totally.
We'll put them in a team and, do stuff with them.
Yeah.
And now they're the most famous characters of the genre now, along with the, staples like X-Men and Spider-Man.
I mean, I think film study students in 20 years will have to do a module on the MCU. Like in the way that film study students, you have to watch Taxi Driver and Citizen Kane and The Godfather, and you have to watch all these seminal films. 15, 20 years time, it'll be, you can't really understand cinema in the 2000s without having an understanding of what the MCU achieved.
Yeah. Exactly. I think it's going to be, the problem is it's not going to stop and then you look at it when it's all done and finished. It's just going to keep going on and on.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the way of things now. And I think that's what makes things like Star Wars so special, is that it just stopped for 20 years.
Yeah, but it's now going to happen more now than ever before.
And looking at the difference between Star Wars in the 70s and 80s and now, like, we got a trill, and 20 years later we got another trill, and then 20 years later Disney got the rights and just made at once.
And now it's Star Wars non-stop all the time.
Yeah, and again, Star Wars no longer feels special.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there.
Like, I remember when the third trilogy came out, even though those films were whatever they were, and again, I think new Star Wars stuff takes 10 years to age, and it takes a little while for people to come back around to it. People are only just coming back around to the prequels and being like, well, they're kind of okay for what they were. Yeah, it just doesn't feel special anymore. And that might be the problem with the MCU, is that it just stopped feeling special.
Yeah, I mean, they peaked with Infinity War and Endgame. Like, that's a pretty basic take because everyone saw it when it happened.
Yeah.
Even when it was happening and it was great, everyone was going like, they're going to be hard to keep this quality up afterwards because it was culmination of 10 years of films and all that. But yeah, if you want a good example of quality being picked up after decades, go original Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049 that was directed by Denis Villeneuve, coming back to Dune. I brought it back round.
Oh, are we done?
I was just thinking, I think we've exhausted MCU talk without going into like talk that's already happened and out there and stuff.
I was having fun.
I mean, we are having fun, but also we're hour 20 and I have to edit this. So,
so thank you for listening. I've had a wonderful time making this episode. I hope you've had a wonderful time listening to it. If you'd like to leave a review, anything mean, just whatever you want to say, whatever is on your mind, man, with 5 stars attached to it. And I'll probably read it out because I get a bit excitable.
Absolutely. We've had a bunch of comments on the latest shorts, so at some point we can go through those and get
haven't
them.
We?
Yeah, a lot of fun ones.
Yeah, because you guys, I don't know where you guys are, but you have been pushing those shorts. Like, something has happened algorithmically with those shorts are finding people, and it brings me so much joy.
The way it looked at it was, we're finally getting the respect we deserve.
Don't
from
say
the
that
algorithm.
out loud. Don't say that out loud. Fucking hell. That's not an attractive personality trait.
We're finally being paid the respect that we deserve. Gotta say it from your chest.
If you want to send us an email, you can do so at comicglitter@gmail.com.
And
next week, we're actually going to do Avatar The Last Airbender.
Or we might not do it and just keep that as a running bit where we say we're going to do it, but we won't. But we probably will do it next week.
So thank you for listening. Alan Moore, and good night.
Thank you. Goodbye.